Hello to all of you taking part in the Early Childhood Australia Conference. I wish we were together. I bet you wish that you were together. I was in Australia a year ago in March when the pandemic began. I was in Sydney working with educators as part of a collaboration with KU Children's Services. And I was anticipating going on to Melbourne and then to Hobart, and then the pandemic really hit and I scooted fast out of the country, and I've been homesick for you ever since. I've been homesick for Australia. I've been homesick for you who are my comrades and my colleagues, my co-conspirators in our work together to reclaim and to revitalize early childhood education. So I'm glad to be able to say hello in this little video greeting. And I'm eager to share a bit with you about the Reimagining Our Work book collection. Some of you probably know this book that Margie Carter and I co-authored in 2018, From Teaching to Thinking, a Pedagogy for Reimagining Our Work. And that subtitle is important, a pedagogy for reimagining our work. That's what this book aims to invite, the strong work of reimagining, of interrogating old habits and assumptions and scripts that no longer serve us in education, and to call us into an understanding of education as being the act of listening, of being anchored in deep intention and in humility, and holding tight to a commitment to critical discourse. The book invites a multiplicity of experiences and acknowledges a multiplicity of truths. And it's shaped by a conversation between Margie and me. That's the shape of the book. And it's certainly a conversation we invite you to join as readers. And it's a conversation that's been expanded in the couple years since it was published by this collection of books authored by educators called the Reimagining Our Work book collection. That's a series of books that are authored by educators, by early childhood teachers, anchored in their daily lived practice of teaching and learning. And in the books, we hear educators take up ideas of substance and pursue questions that matter. And the books really foreground educators' reflections on their practice at the same time as they share stories of experiences that they've co-constructed with children. So I'm going to give you a little overview of the books. The first book that was published is by Bridget Toll and Angela Heap, and it's called A Cup. These are educators in Auckland, New Zealand, and it is a beautiful illumination of the role of materials in sparking inquiry, not only for children, but for the educators themselves. And it's just an exuberant story of what happens when teachers stay curious and humble and responsive and delighted by children. The second book in the series is called You Can't Celebrate That. It's by Nadia Jabanetta, who is a teacher in a full-day childcare center in San Francisco. And this book, it's tiny and it is powerful. It is rich and deep and provocative. It describes Nadia's experience of joining with families and children and her co-teachers to confront this wrenching moment of racialized bias and exclusion enacted by a white child to a dark-skinned multiracial child in her classroom over lunch one afternoon. And Nadia's story is brave and vulnerable and bold and really demonstrates what social justice teaching can be. Another book in the series is Treasures in the Thicket by Bethica Quinn with Rosalina Rodriguez. They're co-teachers in a Spanish language preschool that Bethica founded when her children were quite young. And the book itself is bilingual in Spanish and English, and it foregrounds children's work to create a book to share actually with children in New Zealand about the animals in this little parkland that they visit in San Francisco. And the book itself is a real window into the insight about being human that we can gain when we give our deepest attention to children's ways of seeing and knowing and wondering, the ways that they think and they communicate through drawing and painting. That book is visually very rich with children's representational work. Another book, A Can of Worms by Nick Terrones. He's a toddler teacher in Seattle. And his work is really grounded in the belief that toddlers have great capacity for uncertainty and for not knowing. He kind of turns the idea inside out that we think toddlers need to have everything settled and figured out and resolved. He says, no, they absolutely can linger in the space of not knowing. And he writes about what we adults can learn from toddlers' capacity for uncertainty, especially as we take up issues of race and racism, issues of gender identity and sexual identity, and wrestle our way into great activism alongside children and in our own lives. The book that has most recently come out is called Pursuing Bad Guys. It's by Donna King. She's a teacher in a preschool in Raleigh, North Carolina. And her book traces her learning journey into the practice of taking up long-term, in-depth explorations, investigations, inquiries, co-constructed with children. And the children in this particular story take on bad guys. And Donna stands with them so powerfully. She doesn't try to minimize bad guys or humanize bad guys for the children, but she really partners with them and stands strong with them as they confront bad guys and work to vanquish them. And so the book tells that story, and alongside it, the parallel story of Donna's own evolution as a pedagogical thinker, working with a pedagogical companion. So all of those books are companion volumes to that foundational text that Margie and I wrote, but they're also standalone books. Each one is a really powerful testament to the ways in which educators are reimagining their work and rethinking the purpose of education and the practice of education. And our hope is that the books challenge you, that they exhilarate you, that they unsettle you, and that they rejuvenate you. We hope that you find kinship in these books with the educators. And most of all, we hope that the books in these series sustain you and help you reimagine your work. Thanks for joining the conversation of reimagining our work.